Okay, so let's get started. We're going to paint this beautiful tree over here. I'm not sure if that's an oak tree or not. I suspect it might be because of it's one of the last surviving trees out here. It's late autumn when this is being recorded, and we had a lot of wind last night, a little bit of rain, and we have some wind this morning. It's very chilly out here. My hands are freezing just after setting up all this equipment. But I wanted to get in this sketch of this last holdout of a tree. And I'm not going to focus on the entire tree. I'm going to focus in on a more intimate scene of it to make it look a bit more interesting. And we're probably going to have some company here and there, right by a cow pasture. By the way, my name is Jason Tako, and if you're new to my channel, I hope you enjoy it. And hit the like button if you do end up liking this video. It really helps me out. Let me tell you my colors really quick. Titanium white, cadmium yellow light, and this version of cadmium yellow light is almost cadmium lemon. Cadmium yellow light, at least some of the other versions I've used, tend to be a bit more toward the orange side. This is cadmium orange, yellow ochre, transparent red oxide. Could also be burnt sienna, but I'm using transparent red oxide here. Cadmium red, and that's cadmium red medium. Alizarin permanent, or alizarin crimson actually. Don't think I'll be using much of this in this painting. Ultramarine blue, viridian, and chromium green oxide. As you can see, we're right by a road. That person was going a bit fast. So I'm thinking I'm not going to go for a literal rendering of this scene exactly how it is. I'm going to try something and see if this will work. I'm going to take a much more sketchy approach to this painting. Number one, because I think it'd be a bit more interesting, and number two, it's cold out here. So I really don't care to get every single thing I see in there. And what really interests me is the light on these trunks. And the color of the leaves. And I just feel like doing something different today. Just want to let you know I teach live online painting classes if you're interested in learning under me. I don't go a whole lot into detail here because we're up against the clock. But in my classes, I'll teach you everything you need to know to make a really good painting and to become a good artist. We work on a painting as a group over a 4-week period of time. And I tell you all my colors I'm mixing, why I'm mixing them, all the theory behind it. Take you through step by step, stroke by stroke. And in the process, you're going to learn a lot. That I do promise you. Unless you're already a master. In which case, you probably wouldn't be watching my videos, you'd be painting. So if you're interested in checking it out, there's a link below. You click on that, it takes you to a waiting list, and when a spot opens, I let you know. My student retention rate is very high, and a lot of my students, if they have to leave for various reasons, scheduling conflicts and that, most of them end up returning. And space is limited. But if you're interested, sign up on that. Using that link below. And hopefully maybe we'll see you someday if a spot opens up. And get to meet you in person. Okay, we got some of this wing coming in. This is going to make things a bit interesting. I kind of hate painting in the wind. It's one of my Achilles heels. Don't know if I mentioned I'm using right now a imitation badger hairbrush made by Rosemary and Company. And I really like these brushes for work like this. And as you can see, I'm using a bit more mineral spirits than I normally do if you watch my other videos. So I'm just trying a different approach. And this is more like how I used to paint quite a bit in my younger years. This is more of a Richard Schmid type approach to painting. And I have to admit that his approach works really good for intimate scenes like this. Especially when you have all kinds of little scraggly stuff. Like this foliage and that. Or actually all these bare sticks. So most of this was just Mix in a warm dark, ultramarine blue. Transparent red oxide, and I also use some viridian here and there. And a touch of yellow ochre when I wanted to lighten it up. This branch does not split off quite this soon, but I'm taking some artistic liberty. I'm moving the branch down. It's higher up in the tree, but I want it down there, so that's where it's going. I'm going for the light part of the trunk, the sunlit part. See how I threw that chromium green oxide in there? When I look at it, it looks very warm, but I just got this impression of there being like a green tinge to it. Kind of a neutralizing factor. There's not enough contrast with the background yet between here and here. And that's what you always want to be looking out for. It's one of the keys to painting. You're just always testing relationships out. Getting a little bit warmer as we move toward the core. And the core is just the area between the lighter part and the dark shadow. Usually it gets a little bit more intense depending on your light temperature. Slightly darker, but boy, when you get these in there, it makes a really convincing painting. Especially on cylindrical forms. Whether it's trees, human anatomy. I almost didn't come out painting this morning when I saw that it was windy and a lot of the tree leaves seem to be gone. But I'm glad I did, even though my hand is going numb. So my plan with this painting is to be a bit more realistic in here, and as we go out, we start to give way to more abstraction. You probably already tell that was my plan anyway, but just thought I'd point it out because I'm not sure what to say right now. Just kidding. So originally I thought I was in a nice spot that's sheltered from the wind, but I'm beginning to learn otherwise. It's always an adventure, plein air painting. If you've never done it and you have the ability to, I would highly, highly encourage it. It's one of the best ways to learn. It's how I taught myself for the most part. And of course, I always encourage it of all my students. And one of the things I have to ask myself when I'm doing this painting is the light's constantly shifting. That's the big challenge with plein air painting. As the light's moving, it's changing. The sun is going to continue to swing over, and it's going to decrease the shadow in this tree. Actually, no, it'll increase it. I'm sorry. I was thinking the wrong way. I got to think in reverse here. So you have to ask yourself, what's going to change first? I've been doing this for years, so I can tell you that what's going to change first is going to be these tree trunks. The leaves on the trees, they're not going to change nearly as fast as far as how the light affects them. But these trunks will. I go a bit warmer with them. There we go. That's the tone and color I was looking for. That's it. I love it when I finally get that tone and it just hits it, just nails it exactly where I want it. Now the wind's probably going to come mess it all up. It seems to get a bit warmer as we drop down. Oh boy, here comes a big gust of wind. some of the fallen leaves. Of course, I might have to take that back with this wind. The thing that might change the most, or the quickest, is the actual leaves on the trees. This up here is too dark now. To cool that off a bit. Slightly cool it and lighten it. I'm going to go with a bit of chromium green oxide. See what that does. The more you paint, the more sensitive you'll be to values. You want to get good instructions so that you know what to look out for, but you have to then apply that instruction so that you have the experience to be able to see it yourself. And I always say, I used to teach music. I used to be a very successful bass player. And I had a number of students, and could always tell the ones that would practice what I would teach them and the ones that wouldn't. And you can tell people what to do, you can tell them what to practice, but if they don't practice them on their own, they're never going to get it. And the great thing about plein air painting is, and just experience, just painting over and over again, making lots of mistakes, falling on your face, shedding some tears about it, and then getting back and hitting the canvas again with all determination, is that you're eventually going to get that experience you need to see what's wrong with your painting. And it can take quite a while. It can take years. Depends on how much you apply it to. It can go quicker as well. It can go quicker if you have good instruction. It took me a long time because I'm pretty much mostly self-taught. I did study under Scott Christensen, who was an absolute master and a phenomenal teacher. And took a few other workshops here and there, read a lot of books, things like that. But otherwise, I'm mostly self-taught. And I remember the workshops really helped because they were able to look at my work and tell me where I was screwing up. And just the inspiration, too, was incredible. But get out there and get that experience. Learn from your mistakes and keep plugging away. barely feel my hands now. Yeah, it's cold out here. And if you are going to try plein air painting for the first time, you might want to do it under more comfortable conditions. That guy driving by probably thinks I'm insane. The other thing I'm doing is I'm constantly squinting at this scene when I look at it. I want to simplify it down to the basic shapes that are in here. If you struggle too much with detail and getting lost in detail, squint at your scene when you paint it. Or if you're working from photos, try blurring the photo, like in Photoshop or something like that. Obviously do a save as, you don't want to blur the original copy, but blur it and that will help you to see the basic big shapes, and it'll help keep you from getting all muddled and lost in the details. Because pretty much every newer artist's issue is they get muddled up in the details. And they do not see the big shapes. They don't see the big value planes. And no matter how hard they try, they don't get a good painting because they don't even know what to look for. There's a lot of complexity in nature, but it's not, the complexity I'm referring to is not so much in the details, but it's in the value masses and the value planes and the relationships between them. Those of you who have watched my channel for a while probably think I'm a broken record, but that is the absolute truth. The sun is starting to hit me now, which is wonderful because it's warming me up a bit, warming my hands up a bit. I want to fatten up this tree. if this trunk is going to be my main attraction, or the light on this trunk, or one of my main attractions, then I want it to take up more space.
Not too cold for that, huh?
Yeah, it's chilly.
Really? Can I look?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, cool. Nice. What brings you out to this spot? Just because you're
Just happened to be driving around and
just driving around?
saw it. It's one of the last trees around here that has some leaves on it.
Yeah.
So I thought I'd...
Yeah, it's a good spot.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a little bit out of the wind too, which was nice.
Yeah. Good job, man.
Yeah, thank you. Cold day for a walk.
My normal walk. I've always liked this spot because it always has the, the cows up there. And
Yep. Yeah, they were down here earlier, and when
Yeah.
I showed up, they decided to move on up the hill.
yeah. All right. Well, have fun.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Okay.
I don't think that guy had any clue that this is all being recorded. Alright, so I'm just making some more tonal adjustments to this trunk. Like I observed earlier, it gets a little darker and warmer as we get down toward the bottom. And it gets a little cooler and almost takes on, that I mentioned before, a slightly greenish tinge as you move up the trunk. Not too green, just a slightly greener tinge then. I almost see some cadmium lemon in there too. Let's see how this looks. These neutrals can be very challenging to get Okay, just checked my camera, decided to brighten up the exposure a little bit. It's challenging being a one-man show out here because you just can't always see what you're doing. I have a background in graphic design, which really helps because I do all my own filming, editing, everything. And tends to be a bit time consuming too, but I do enjoy teaching. And hope you guys enjoy it too. But my graphic design background helps quite a bit. I spent a number of years, Photoshop, Illustrator. A lot of times doing really boring projects for people. So as usual, I'm not going to worry about painting these leaves or these clumps of leaves exactly how they are. I'm more concerned about creating an interesting design and capturing the colors and values. Sounds like a massive gust of wind is coming. I kind of have to hurry up and get those leaves in because this wind is really starting to blow them off the tree. So I'm starting out trying to gauge my darkest colors of leaves and then build on top of that. And there's hints of green in here still. It's probably why this tree probably turned later, which is why it still has some leaves on it. Most of the trees around here are wiped out. The cold temperature is causing the paint to be pretty stiff. Which makes it challenging because at this point I usually like to apply some pretty thick paint very gently over the paint I already laid down, but I really have to thin it quite a bit with mineral spirits just to get it to come off my brush, and that's creating a challenge to say the least, because when you thin it with mineral spirits it loses a lot of its body. It doesn't come off the brush in a nice, consistent manner as it will during warmer temperatures. I think what I'll do is switch to my palette knife. Whoops. That's a bit better. See if I can use a palette knife to get some of these big hits of color on there. The more intense color that I want to go on very opaque. There's a couple really intense reds in there. This is a beautiful tree because the leaves get redder as you go up the tree and they're more yellow down here. It's got a lot of variety in it. If you're interested in supporting my channel, I have a Patreon account set up where you can donate a monthly amount, just a small amount. It really helps. It helps me to continue with all the expenses. You might notice with this recording, this is the first YouTube recording where I don't have a bunch of crackling going on, and that's because I ended up having to buy a new microphone. My last microphone, which is a wired one, finally went kaput. I actually went out and did a recording on location, plein air painting, and it just completely gave out. All you could hear was static. And so that recording, which you might have seen before this one, depends on when I release it, but it was recorded before this. I have not edited it yet, but that's going to end up having a voiceover, which is going to take me quite a bit longer in the editing process. But of course I did not want to keep having to do that, so I went and broke down and bought one of those Rode Go microphones, and so far it's nice, but it was extra expense that I did so you guys could hear me. So if you want to support me, that'd be awesome. Click on the link below. You don't have to, of course, but if you do, I have some nice perks. One of the big ones is if you scroll down to the right now $25 membership, I will be sending you a high-res image of each painting that I do. And also, you'll be entered into a drawing to win some sketches and things like that. So check it out if you're interested. Like I said, and it really helps me. And I just want to give a shout out to my current Patreon supporters, and thank you so much for your help. And it was the help of all you patrons that enabled me to be able to get this microphone, because Google Ads does not pay much, let me tell you that. So if you're interested in supporting me on Patreon, there's a link below. Click on that, and that'll take you to the page. And when you get there, the first 3 contribution levels will show up. And each one describes, what you get in your membership. And if you click on, there should be a button or something beneath that will show the other 3 membership levels. And like I said, the highest one, I'm going to be sending high-res images of my paintings to those membership levels. And you can use the high-res image for your own self-study. Of course, you can't use it for publishing or selling or making prints out of it, but just to have it and look at it, to be able to see all my brush strokes. I take good photos of my paintings, by the way. So back here you can see through some of these trees, some of this background hill. Just giving a slight indication of that. Soften the edges beneath that a little bit. I have a feeling I'm going to take this painting a little more to a finished stage than I originally had thought. So you just never know. Sometimes I start out with certain intentions and I end up with different results. But it's good to be open to that. If you get too locked into your intentions, it's really good to know your intentions before you start, but don't be a slave to them. You gotta let the painting speak to you as well and tell you, kind of give you an idea where it wants to go. This cadmium yellow light is super stiff. And it's the color I need the most to be pliable. Yeah, I'm going to close up that top. I was thinking leaving that white up there, but just feel like it needs to be closed up. There's some shadow areas, quite a few shadow areas in this clump of foliage here. It's not in the exact spots where I'm putting them, but like I said, I'm thinking more design than anything else. And just capturing the overall impression of the scene. Yep, so my intention of keeping it definitely more straight up abstract in the design kind of diminished. And one of the big reasons for that is because I'd ask myself, if do I want to capture the color relationships in here or come up with a really cool design? And I decided for the color relationships. In order to get those color relationships, of course, I have to have what's behind them in there. But I don't regret it at all. It's just a change of intention halfway through. I'm going to clean up this palette, replenish some colors, and continue. Okay, got some colors replenished here. Palette's cleaned off. Okay, so these are some of my most intense colors, but take note how I didn't just use pure cadmium yellow or cadmium yellow light. I toned it down quite a bit. Pure cadmium yellow light would probably not look correct on here. A lot of times, even your most intense colors in nature tend to be a bit subdued. There's a lot of chaos in here. Just tons of different shapes and colors. And best thing you can do is just try to average it all out. Squint at it. And don't obsess too much over one spot over another. Or don't obsess over one spot, I should say. Move around to another spot is really what I meant to say. I wasn't intending on putting this in, but there's a barn roof back there, or some kind of structure. I'm just going to stick that in just like that. Yeah, it's getting there.
Okay, warm enough?
Yeah, sun's coming out.
Really nice.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I had a gentleman stop and talk with me for a bit. Can't remember exactly where I was now. Sun is warming things up a little bit, but not as much as I'd like, of course. But winter is coming, so I better get used to it. And I do intend to keep painting when I can throughout the winter, and I'll be recording it. And by the way, it reminds me, if you are new to my channel, check it out. I got quite a few videos up already for you to watch, mostly plein air painting. I also have some just lessons and things like that. So this area is starting to get somewhat in shadow, but I don't really want to chase that too much, because it probably won't look good. There's a rule that you shouldn't chase the light, and for the most part that's true. Now I will chase the light at times if I feel it's going to make it look better and if I can do it convincingly. Of course, there are times when that's neither one of those is the case. So we're getting some glare from my paper towels. I wish they made black paper towels. It's been a number of times where I'll hold up my paper towel. You see the glare it causes on the canvas. And even just holding it back like this, holding it quite a ways away, but it causes a glare. And when you're out doing this, you want to make sure you wear dark clothing. I have, even though I'm painting a mostly front lit scene, I have my easel turned away from the sun. And I mentioned this a number of times in my other videos. The reason why is because if I don't, at least me personally, I end up painting too dark and too mucky. It just ends up like a colorless void. Not a colorless void, but it just does not look good when I paint with the sunlight directly on my canvas and my palette. And it's because my eyes are looking at the scene and are overcompensating for the intensity of light that's on my canvas. No indoor light is as bright as the sun. And so when you take your painting into indoor light, it's just not going to look good. At least, like I said, at least for me. Some artists I've seen, they paint, you know, with their stuff right out in the sunlight, and it works great for them. I am not one of those people. I definitely have to have it away from the sun. Okay, actually I'm going to clean off my palette a bit, and we're going to get some of that chaos in there that I really love painting in these scenes. Alright, so for stuff like this, all these little tiny shapes that I see in here that represent all this chaos of branches and things, which you're going to have a lot in the wintertime scene or in a late fall scene like this. And what I mean by winter is not specifically snow on the ground, but just the foliated trees and that. But you can have all this jumble between darks and lights. So I'm going to mix some of my dark color and some of my light color. Just approximates. Mix a pretty decent pile of each one. Now I can always mix into these and make adjustments to them. I pretty much guarantee I'll have to do that. In fact, I'm going to make a couple slight adjustments right now. You have to be careful too. You have to think about the principle of diffraction. The little dark things are not going to be quite as dark as you think. The thinner the dark branch, the lighter in value it's going to be, and the opposite goes for the light branches. And what I mean by light is ones that are illuminated by sunlight. The thinner the branch, the darker it'll be. Now, I absolutely love doing this when I can pull it off and get it right. And leaving some of these kind of brush strokey, if that's a word, brush strokey, that's funny. I probably said that before and you guys laughed. But anyway, these brush strokey things in here where you can see, you know, all this texture of the canvas and everything actually helps lend to the impression of this chaos that we're trying to capture in here. So you don't have to paint every single little branch to get the impression of it. By the way, right here, there's a fence. It's kind of saving that fence for the end, but I'm gonna at least put that one in right now. So I'm using the imitation badger hair brush. And I could use the palette knife too, but the badger hair brush gives me a bit more control. And it lays the paint down a little nicer, in my opinion, than the palette knife for situations like this where I want this much control. Okay, I'm gonna drop off course just a little bit. Just want to play with that tree. Okay, back on task here. Chaos, chaos, chaos. And when there's a ton of it back here in the distance, I'll just use a stroke of my brush to suggest it, instead of trying to paint all kinds of 8 million little tiny sticks and things like that. Don't need to do it, and you don't have the time to do it. At least I don't have the time to do it. Okay, let's switch to the lighter colored paint. Now, light's not going to capture every single part of these branches. It's a dappled light, and so you're going to have some light here and there. It's going to show up and it's going to disappear. That's what's going to add to the illusion of chaos. I just darkened the paint a little bit. And I'm just going to do a quick little wisp. By the way, the brush I'm using, if you want to know specifically, it's a Rosemary and Company. They're a Great Britain brush company, but if you live in the United States, they ship very fast and very reasonable. Of course, I don't know right now as I'm recording this, the post office is in absolute chaos and lack of help. So I'm not sure if they have a UPS or FedEx option. You might want to go with that. But anyway, back to the type of brush. It's a Rosemary and Company Long Flat Series 279. That's 279. And this is a number 4. And I'm just using the edge of it, as you can see here. And it creates a very sharp, very nice fine edge. And allows you to put in these very fine, thin lines. And I really like them. They're basically the replacement for the old Langnickels they used to have that were awesome brushes for the time, but they would lose hair really fast. I mean, you could almost wipe out an entire brush in one painting. And so Rosemary decided to perfect the recipe, if you will. And they did a heck of a job. I believe Morgan Wisling, the master artist, worked with her on these. These are also Richard Schmid's favorite brushes, kind of a secret weapon, if you will. I remember one time reading that he thought he had heard something that Langnickel, this is before Rosemary was making these brushes, and he thought Langnickel was going to stop making them, and he just didn't know what he was going to do. Okay, so now I'm going to switch to the palette knife because I want to give up control. Man, does that sound like an 80s song or what? Some dead leaves. Catching a bit more light than that. I think I quoted a old Laura Branigan song there, "Giving Up Control," for all you 80s buffs out there. There's something about self-control, I don't know. I'll start freaking out the millennials. I start quoting and singing 80s songs here. Okay, so I have to ask myself, how far do I want to take this as far as, there's a lot of stuff in here, and I don't want to go too far because I could end up kind of destroying the impression. Dang, now I got that Laura Branigan song in my head. That was a bit too much. Actually, I don't mind that. Just slightly refine that a bit. Yeah, I kind of like that. Okay, so let's get the fence in. This fence is going to have a design function in that it's going to give some organization to all the chaos we have going on in here. But I don't want to go too much with it. I just want a hint of this fence in here. And the last thing I want is to make this fence perfectly even. It's like perfectly spaced. Every post is the exact same height. That would just be as dull as could be. I once was teaching a class and I had a student in there and she was painting some horses behind the fence, and she had painted the fence just perfect, like in a bad way. It was super stiff and the perspective was kind of off, and every post was the exact same height, the exact same size, width, thickness, you name it. And I had suggested to her, I said, you might want to try varying that fence up and, kind of tilting one post one way, one the other, just to give it a little bit of interest. And she got really indignant and she said, no, you can't do that because otherwise, if you did that, the horse would be able to get out. And so I was like, well, I guarantee you your horses in this painting won't get out. And she, of course, did not change it. So, which is her prerogative, of course. It's the thing we love about art is we can create our own world in it. Our own world in our painting, I should say. But it's nice when that world can be interesting looking too. And should never be afraid to take a bit of artistic liberty to give interest to your world that you're creating. Big question is how refined do I want to get with these leaves up here? I think I'm going to use the same approach. Let's mix a dark version. So this color, let's test that out. That's pretty good. That's going to be the leaves in shadow. And then let's do leaves in sunlight. Too pale, we need more color. Ooh, really strong wind. Drop my palette knife. Thank goodness it landed in the grass and not on the road. Okay, so I want to be careful with this area up here. I do not want to draw too much attention to this space because my focal point is in here. But I also don't want this area to look like it was just abandoned, and that's kind of what it looks like right now. Plus, I wouldn't mind capturing a little more of that color up here. Even though these leaves are not over here, I do want to balance that side out a bit with some of that color over here. So the cows that were here when I started completely abandoned this area. I have no idea where they went, but they are gone. Let's set that color on the side. Clean up the palette a bit. I'm going to focus on the foreground, give it one last look, and then we'll hopefully call it a sketch. It's a bit dark, so let's punch it up a bit. So my whole abstract idea just went down the tubes. Abstract composition, that is, but that's okay. I do like it. Okay, the tricky part is going to be showing these leaves, the sunlight, warm leaves. Let's put a little bit of that down here. These leaves are falling, and so obviously where they're falling down, you're going to have some of that color. They turn pretty quickly to a more gray color after they disconnect with the branches. Okay, it's just a couple more shapes I want to get in there of dark branches. Especially in this spot right here to kind of break this up a bit. My paint got a bit too thin on me. Keep having to thin it with mineral spirits because of the cold, but I overdid it. Don't know if I like that. That's just too much. I think that's a bit too dark up there. Just want to go through and make sure that things aren't too spotty. At this point, I'm thinking way more from a design perspective than trying to capture the scene as it is. I'm not completely ignoring the scene, not by any means, but I just want to ask myself, okay, what can I use from this scene now to make this painting a little more interesting, since I have the time to do it. You know, and that's the key. If you don't have the time to do it, then don't worry about it, especially if you're newer. I've said that before. But you get a bit more experienced, and you can start playing around with these things. Soften some of these edges a bit. All right, I think we're going to call that a sketch. Thank you very much for watching. Check out some of my other videos. If you did like this video, do me a favor and give me a thumbs up. Consider subscribing. Don't forget, if you want to study under me, check out the link below. You can also support my channel that way. And thank you very much for watching.